Welcome to the 2024 kickoff, a belated kickoff of Make Love Not War, a Pull Tab Sports podcast production. Ryan Stanzel here, joined today, someone joined before, Heather Rule, freelance journalist extraordinaire in the Twin Cities. Heather, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
I would say Heather in the past has joined me as someone who has actually done some work for the Twins, so I feel like we can really pull back the onion a little bit here and maybe get Heather to be a little more controversial with her takes, perhaps. So there's honestly not a lot of controversial things right now with your Minnesota Twins. So, Heather, I know we talked prior to the season and quite a bit just about the Twins, but expectations were, last year was kind of iffy. So the year before obviously was good, but it didn't really go anywhere. I think for sure for me they've exceeded expectations, but where were you in March compared to where you are now, not knowing that Lewis was going to come back and be out? He has, all the other things that we'll talk about, but expectations then versus now for you.
Sure. Yeah. I wasn't, I wasn't necessarily sure how this season was going to go. I thought, okay, they had that great run last year. I could easily see some steps back, maybe for certain players, and I think we've kind of seen that with Pablo Lopez a little bit too. He was so dominant last year, and I thought, okay, he might not have the same type of season last year, just as one example. But I thought maybe the AL Central was going to be better this year. It's kind of been the baseball doormat the past few seasons, which makes it a little easier for the Twins. And now that the schedule's balanced out a little bit too, it's not as big of a factor as it was when you're playing some of those teams 18 times or whatever it was, playing the White Sox.
Could we get the White Sox 28 times terrible. Maybe?
Yeah, that would be good. So, I thought, but with the expanded playoffs too, and with the wild cards, I still go back to when you had, the division winners, and you had, one wild card out of the league. And now just with the way it's expanded a little bit, there's so many more teams that have a chance that, are either in a wild card spot or are competing. They're right there for a wild card spot. So it just opens things up a lot more for teams that maybe just wouldn't have even been in it at all. So,
yeah, who are you
as far as expectations?
There's nobody. Yeah, who are you afraid of in the American League, right? Like, the Yankees are like a house of cards, and I'm a Yankees fan. Like, there's just, there's nothing. There's no reason any team not named the Chicago White Sox can't make some sort of run if they made the playoffs. I think one of the things I see from last year is just they were able to win different ways. Last year, man, you had to win every game 2-1. They were a terrible team to try to watch. They're great. It's an hour and 50 minutes. Of course, now most of us can't watch them anyways. We'll get to that later. But they're able to win so many different ways now compared to the past. They do pitch minus Lopez, but the bats and the young guys, it's just such a more fun team. Even to read about, to listen to watch this year than really any time in the last. Bomba's squad was great, but that's all they did. This team, top to bottom, left to right, can literally do everything.
Yeah, and the one thing that I looked up today too is the amount of strikeouts that the team has at the plate.
Yeah.
Watching that last year that was probably the biggest difference with just so many just automatic outs and so many games where they had double-digit strikeouts as a team and led the league in strikeouts. I think there are 20 teams when I looked up today that have more strikeouts than them this year. So that's, that right there is great to see. Like, that is a huge difference, I think, because you're, then you're putting the ball in play more. You're, making your opponent having to make plays. Anything can happen if you put the ball in play. Somebody can make an error. You could get it, some fluky thing could happen. If you're striking out all the time, that's, not productive. So I think that has been huge.
Ryan Jeffers. Sorry, go ahead.
No.
Ryan Jeffers, looked like his career was over, right? And now he barely strikes out. He's got 14 home runs. Where would this team be without Ryan Jeffers? Imagine saying that a year ago. Jeffers, Willie Castro, guys like that were just kind of forgotten about, and really, on their own fault, they weren't doing a whole lot. But this year, the big guys obviously are one of the main reasons. But Jeffers, Castro, just the role players that have really stepped up, to me, have been a key in this resurgence.
Yeah, and for sure, Willie Castro, I think, is somebody that, me and other people too that had watched this team the past couple of years, like I think last year especially, there were a few times where, you talk about roster situations and injuries, and you kind of get into, well, where's this guy going to fit? Where's he going to fit when he gets back up? That kind of thing. And it always kind of has the way of working itself out. And so many times last year, it was like Castro was the guy that it was like, well, it's like, well, they're going to have to send him down because Sosa's going to come back, and then someone else would always get hurt. So he always kind of was around. And for me, it was always, he's a switch hitter and he's a utility player, which is so huge. And especially for a team that loves to platoon and pinch hit a lot. I think sometimes still to a fault, in my opinion. I think they do it too much sometimes. But I think that was his greatest asset, is just being so versatile. And this year, I mean, they're seeing he's getting in almost every game, I think, and he's playing well. It's not like he's just going up there and striking out and making errors and all that. So he's been great. And Ryan Jeffers too, you mentioned. I mean, I think he's cooled off a little bit with the bat from what he was earlier on, but I mean, to see him get some of those clutch home runs too has been huge.
And Castro's a guy. I mean, if I, even 3 months ago, like, Eddie Julian's going to be in St. Paul, and this team's going to be 5 games off a really. They're 5 games out of first, but Cleveland is on an unreal pace. So they're essentially they're one of the better teams in the American League. And Julian, who hit leadoff almost the entire year last year and is a darn good player and gets on base a ton, is not even on this roster. So it's kind of whoever. We all worry about injuries. We all worry about everything else. Lewis gets hurt. What do you know? Then Brooks Lee steps in. Now, what's going to happen when Lewis comes back? Well, somebody's going to be hurt. So you always worry about not having enough players, but to me, you never want to worry about having too many. Let's talk about Brooks Lee. Man, there are some major crushes among sports writers in this town, one of which is going to be a guest on this podcast soon, but he's not out of his element up here. He just came in and basically took Royce Lewis's role and said, all right, I'm here. There's no way they can send him back now. And these guys do have a tendency to cool down once they're up here for, a couple weeks, but man, he's got the makings of a star.
Definitely. I saw him, I went to a Saints game a few weeks ago and saw him just crush a couple of home runs in that game alone, which was kind of just what he'd been doing in St. Paul. And it doesn't seem like much has really changed once he got to the big leagues. He has a home run. He's come up with, I think some clutch hits too, which, is good to see from anybody to come through when your team needs you. But he's done that. And I think he's really fit right in. Again, being, switch hitter, I think is huge too for what the team needs and for where they can put him in and get his bat in the lineup. And I think I saw he's batting leadoff, I think, for the second game of the doubleheader today in Chicago. But yeah, it's been great to see him come up and just not really miss a beat.
Yeah, it's you always hear about these guys forever, and then sometimes they come and they go, or sometimes they stay, and it's great to see when they live up to the billing, at least in the short term. Quick, want to hear from a sponsor here, Duke Cannon. We got a bunch of products up here. Everyone knows Duke Cannon makes the best men's hair products money can buy, clearly. But do you know they also offer a great selection of soaps, body washes, and cologne? That's right, cologne is back. I need to grab some. It's a little sweaty out today. Just in time, and it's not the stinky stuff your dad used to wear. Sorry, Dad. Smell great on a summer night out in the town. Available as a solid or a liquid. You'll be smelling as manly as Clint Eastwood in a cowboy hat, drinking whiskey on an old western porch. Find your summertime scent at Duke Cannon. Work harder, smell better. Speaking of young guys who came up and did well and then were kind of forgotten about, and I think this kind of speaks to a theme. We'll talk about Jose Miranda, but of this team, I also said administration. Can you tell I work in schools? This management team has not given up on some of these young guys that maybe need a little more time. Miranda's a guy who 2 years ago I wrote on Pull Tab. He's the next captain of this team. He's the most important player for the next 10 years. And then, after 6 months, he definitely proved he maybe kind of hit a ceiling for that point. He needed a little more seasoning in the minors. They sent him down. From what I hear, he didn't sulk. He just went down, did his job. The Twins, to their credit, did not forget about him. They didn't DFA him. They didn't try to trade him. And he's come back a year later, and where would this team now be without Miranda?
Right, exactly. And he, came in and had just this, record hitting streak going on too, which was amazing. And I thought, okay, I kept seeing the updates. I thought, well, eventually he's gonna make it out. It's gonna end at whatever, 6, 7. It was ended up being what, 12 at bats, whatever it was. And then I think I heard that the crowd was booing when he got pinch hit for in a game against the Astros, but I think that was more about the Twins pitchers had
Yes.
plunked a couple of Astros and they were worried about retaliation. So yeah, but it's been great to see that for Miranda. I think last year was kind of a lost year in a lot of ways. He dealt with injuries, and from the time he came up, his fielding wasn't that great either. That wasn't anything to write home about. So I think it's been good to see that he's come back the way he has, and even going into spring training this year, I think I was kind of wondering, well, where's he going to fit? Where's he going to be if Royce is back and there, Julian should be up here, Kirilov should be up here. Those are guys that aren't here right now with the team, and for him to step in the way he has with the bat has been really great to see, and it is a case for kind of the team not writing guys off either and sticking with them.
And he also benefits, and they all do. Last year this team had 2 good hitters in the lineup on any given night. There's 4 to 5 every night guys that are significant threats in that lineup. I mean, we're 12 minutes in. We haven't talked about Byron Buxton yet. But this team is finally has 4 to 6 options up and down the lineup where you can't, there's no easy outs. You can't just skip guys. So Miranda, they're all getting a lot more pitches to hit than ever before because no one wants to pitch to Carlos Correa right now. So, when you have that many guys hitting and that many guys threats and they're not striking out as much and they put the ball in play, the sky's kind of the limit. We saw what they put up 11 the other night against the Astros. I mean, they lost, but 11 runs last year was like a good week, a couple of weeks over the summer. Royce Lewis is hurt. Hopefully he'll be back after the All-Star break. I mean, he's going to be the greatest Twin since Kirby Puckett for sure. Is maybe already pretty darn close. He needs some playoff success. Don't come after me for that, but he's got the charisma. Is it the Riz? Is that what the kid's saying? He's got it all. I am looking forward to this guy playing 10, 15 more years. For a guy with 2 blown out knees and other things, there's certainly things you worry about, but man, he's just fun to watch. And again, for those of us that can watch him, he is really fun to watch, and he doesn't take many days off, and he's just a pleasure to have on your team and in your city, and that smile. I just love watching the guy play.
Yeah, he's that positive energy that I think anyone wants to have in the dugout, on the field, at the plate. I mean, we saw what he did, last year with all the grand slams, which was amazing. And then, coming in the playoffs, hitting some home runs. This year it's a home run first day, gets hurt, but then comes back. When he comes back, what's he doing? He's hitting home runs again. It gets to the point where it's like, did he hit a home run today? Yeah. No, he didn't. Well, what's wrong with that?
He'll probably hit one tomorrow. Don't worry.
Yeah. And he even mentioned, I don't do slumps, I think, a couple of weeks ago. And, so it is, the injuries are unfortunate. I think that's what's tough. And it's kind of really reminiscent of how Buxton's career has developed. And, just a lot of injuries that aren't, they're frustrating because they're not, Buxton's had a lot of the running into walls and, hitting his head on the ground when he makes a catch, getting hit by pitches kind of things. And with Royce, it's, 2 times this year running the bases. So I think that's frustrating. And even one of the quotes I saw in one of the notebooks for the Star Tribune recently was, well, if somebody told me Babe Ruth smoked cigarettes and that worked, like, I'm willing to try that. Like, I'm willing to try anything. And so I'm hoping that, if there's some kind of change that can be made to try and prepare him better so he doesn't get injured, I don't know about that, but that's been tough. But yeah, when he is playing, when he is in the lineup, just to see what he can do, and it's almost like you expect him to hit every time, kind of like Miranda had his streak, and you just expect he's going to go up there and do something great, and the moment doesn't seem too big for him either, which I really love. And just to see the energy that he brings, it's I hope he's a guy that we're going to be able to see in the lineup consistently for a long time here.
Yeah, I mean, the energy, and I watched those games on TV, but the energy in the Toronto series, the first round last year, when he steps to the plate, people don't go to get a beer, they don't go to get a hot dog, they're going to wait until he's done batting. That's something really this team hasn't had in a decade. in a decade at least. Buxton, when as you said, he gets hurt a lot running. You could tell Buxton like softened it here, but he's not going to be the same player. I hope that a lot of the Lewis stuff is just freaky. A guy who's had to rehab hard from a couple of knees. You just hope that we can stay away from that part of his body when he gets hurt. But for the most part, they've been things that can heal in a couple weeks. And if he can stay in the lineup, if we can get him for 120, 125 games a year at least, this team should be a playoff team all the time. You mentioned Pablo Lopez. Man, like if I told you they were where they were right now, and Lopez has an ERA over 5, you wouldn't believe me then either. But what do you think is up with him? He's obviously got the big contract now. That I don't think that's really a big deal. Have the AL batters kind of caught on to him a little bit more? What do you attribute some of his struggles this year to?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think this was the one that I think is tough just because I haven't been able to watch the games.
I'm asking you to break down his mechanics, thankfully.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of other things I can. I followed a lot on still on social and reading and other podcasts, but I think without seeing Pablo pitch, I think it's tougher to really figure out like what's going on with him. But like I said earlier, I would have expected some kind of regression, from last year to this year. Just I wasn't expecting it to be an ERA in the 5 range. And if you're talking about like a playoff rotation at this point, I mean, he's at least number 2, maybe number 3.
He's probably 3. Yeah,
I don't know. He's probably 3, which is weird to think about when he was the opening day starter and kind of your leader last year and in the playoffs and did so well. So I don't know if it's just the home runs he gives up, or if there's a pitch he's turning toward a lot more that maybe, like you said, maybe hitters are catching on to that or catching on to kind of a pattern with him. I'm not really sure, but it's something that hopefully he can figure out here and figure out against I think he's had some better outings lately against teams that aren't as good, which is overall been kind of the Twins' MO this season is their record against good teams isn't very good. So hopefully he can figure it out too.
I think Pablo too is a guy who's like Royce. He's driven by the moment, and last year he knew he had to win a lot of games 2-1, and he went out there and he was super ultra focused. And if you see your team put up 4 runs in the first inning, there shouldn't be, but there for sure is a little bit different mentality, I think, going out there. And I think as the season goes on and the stage gets brighter, I would expect, I don't know if he's going to be 2022 or 2023 Pablo Lopez, but I think that, he should come back to Earth or go back from Earth a little bit more towards outer space. But I would expect him to rebound a little bit here in the second half. Quick, another sponsor mention here. We got Jimmy's. Where's Jimmy's here? Hang on. There we go. Jimmy's Salad Dressings and Dips. It's officially coleslaw season. I don't know if you knew that. Grab a jar of Jimmy's coleslaw dressing to give your slaw the zip and zing that everyone will be talking about at their next grad party, wedding, all those great things that we have in the summer. Available in original, fat-free, and I can't wait to take a couple of these pineapple home with me. Pineapple slaw sounds just delightful. Jimmy's is family fun, locally owned, delicious on burgers, brats, pulled pork, and as a summertime side, you can't go wrong with Jimmy's. Pick up a jar today, Jimmy's Salad Dressing and Dips. Don't you be messing with my dressing. Let's talk about Rocco Baldelli. You mentioned a little bit how micromanaging still a bit. It's definitely less noticeable when your team wins at the rate they are. An old general manager I worked with in the NHL, I won't say his name, but you'll know who it is, always used to say, managers manage, coaches coach, and players play. When the players play, the manager looks a lot better, doesn't he? It's unbelievable.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yes. It, kind of reminds me of the, 2019 and the Bomba squad. That was his first year managing, and everything was great because they were winning and they won the division and hit all these home runs and not really much adversity. So you really find out a lot more about, how things are going when adversity hits. And, they've had some of that his past few years. And, it's, when you're winning, everything's great and there's not as much to criticize. For sure. For me, and again, not being able to watch as much of them, and be a little more disconnected, than the past few years. I'm not seeing kind of the day in, day out, kind of all the moves, the pitching changes and pinch hitting and that kind of thing. I think as far as the like starting pitching goes, I think that has gotten a lot better. As far as just kind of the early hooks that we used to see,
Well, he's
the
got guys that aren't giving up 4 runs in the
inning.
third innings now too. So it's
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It kind of goes hand in hand for sure.
day in day out. Consistently the starting pitching is as good as it's been in a while. And the bullpen. I know Thielbar's had some struggles. He's been better lately, but again, I think in the next month or two, and we'll see what happens at the deadline in a few weeks. But he's going to have to really zero in on that seventh and eighth inning situation to get to Duran. And if he can get 6 from Joe Ryan and Bailey Ober and Pablo like this, again, you can score 4 or 5 runs a night. There's certainly nobody in the AL to be afraid of. However, you have to, based on how the record is this year against good versus so-called poor teams, do you think this team can win 3 or 4 games in an October series? Heather, prediction? I do. I'll go. I will say I don't think there's a team in the AL they can't beat. I'm not saying they're going to go to the World Series, but I think that if they play to the level they should be at on a day in and day out basis, there's just no reason that they can't go out there and compete in a playoff series.
Yeah, I think despite last year finally breaking the drought and the long streak, I'm still pretty cautious about the postseason especially because those series are so short too. The best 2 out of 3 is tough. Obviously if you don't get that first one. So yeah, I'm still pretty cautious about it. I think they could, I think they do need to show something here in the rest of the regular season against, like Cleveland or Baltimore. I actually don't know if they play Baltimore again, but they need to show something where, hey, this was a good series win, or this was a great, team win against a good team, against someone that's not, the White Sox or the Tigers or whoever. Not only for the fans to see, but I think for their own confidence too, to see that they can do that. But at the same time, I guess after last year, they did beat Toronto and win. So, maybe that was
the monkey's off their back.
But yeah, the monkey's off the back.
But you worry, like, is that monkey just replaced by, your 0 whatever against this team? And, I think this is maybe the most important deadline for this front office since they've taken over. I've thought a lot this week about, 2 years ago, this team was in a pretty good position. They did make a couple of moves, most of which backfired quickly. I think Jorge Lopez is finally out of the league after his temper tantrum about a month ago with the Mets. But to their credit, I think they realized, and a lot of fans were unhappy about this, we are not going to win a World Series this year. So they made a couple kind of superficial moves that were definitely going to help them. Allegedly, they kind of backfired, as I said, but they were not willing to give up the farm for a run in which Buxton wasn't healthy. Like, could they really have won it that year? Probably not. And that is to their credit, because those guys now, Lewis, Lee, are cornerstones of this franchise. So, I'm not saying you're going to give up Lee if the opportunity presents itself, but there are certainly more assets now, and you have those assets because 2 years ago, when you weren't going to win anyways, you didn't just give it all up. So I'm interested to see in the next couple of weeks what happens, because I do think, maybe some bullpen. You look at the way teams are built nowadays. The Twins are pretty good 7th, 8th, 9th, but you got to have a 4th inning guy, a 5th inning guy. The teams that do well in the playoffs have really good starting pitching, but when somebody falters, they've got somebody who can come in and shut you down in the 4th inning, and I'm not really sure the Twins have that.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think, and that's everything I've heard too, is at the deadline, they've got to get, it'd be great to get another starter and another bullpen guy for sure. I think we look at the rotation, everyone's, I think, kind of hoping Pablo figures it out. Simeon Woods Richardson, I think, has been a really pleasant surprise for how well he's done. You've got Ober and Ryan. I think lately there's, a little worry about maybe Chris Paddock. I'm not sure internally if there is anything, but he's struggled a little bit. He's dealt with injuries and, has not played a full season in a while. I don't think so. I think there's some concern about him getting to the finish line and being able to make a run like that. had a guy like Louis Varland who's kind of been up and down, as maybe he could help out and be that guy. But yeah, I think that's they're definitely going to zero in on pitching for sure. I think it's just a matter of who are you going to give up for that, and how many pitchers are you going to get.
Well, and I mean, in the back of their mind, certainly also Joe Ryan was having a fine time of it this time last year, and then the bottom completely dropped out in August and September. So I think this is a different Joe Ryan. I think he really took it personally last year, in the playoffs, that I have to be better because I can't let this happen to me again. So I think he'll certainly be better. But in the back of their minds, they got to, if you've got 3 solid guys for the playoffs, it's a decent start. But if one of them falters, they're in a lot of trouble right now. So definitely having a little extra there would be good. Hear from our next sponsor here, Chill Boys. Summer is heating up, but you still need to keep your boys cool downstairs. I was in Boston last week, and it was really hot, and I had my Chill Boys with me, and it was just a wonderful experience. Good thing Chill Boys have got you covered. It's right there in their name. Whether you go for bamboo boxers, bamboo boxer briefs, or performance boxers, the hot weather of summer will be no contest against Chill Boys underwear, even that sticky northeast weather. Check out their new fun summer patterns to keep your undercarriage looking stylish. Visit chillboys.com. Use PullTab15 for 15% off. Chill Boys, comfort where it counts. They have new Vikings purple colors as well. Gosh, we've barely mentioned Byron Buxton. Isn't that amazing how far things have come? And maybe that's what he needed, right?
Yeah.
I think, one of the things when we talked about Rocco, we've talked in the past about this country club atmosphere. Right? I think having Buxton around this team on a regular basis now, and he is a really good leader, maybe helps a little bit of that. I can stay healthy, but also I'm an extra set of eyes in the locker room that can kind of keep an eye on guys and make sure they're doing the preparations they're supposed to do, because this team still doesn't take a lot of batting practice. But I think Buxton has shown really that his value is certainly very high on the field, but it's super high in that clubhouse as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with Buxton and with Royce too, as far as injuries go, it's something that I think is widely acknowledged. This isn't due to their lack of effort or hustle or work or their want to be out there. I think there's nobody that hates these injuries and being on the lineup more than those guys. So I think that it's been great to see Buxton contribute lately. I mean, everything I've read and heard too is he's kind of back right now. He's hitting, he's producing, and being able to play center field even is huge. They went from this, they were going to kind of try out this thing last year where it was okay. We're going to give him scheduled days off. Yeah. He's only going to DH. We're going to kind of work up to maybe center field, which never really materialized. And so I think it's great to see him, not only with the leadership, but being able to be out there and playing again, I think is just huge for him and, his teammates too, because, they want to see him out there.
And they love him. I mean, his smile is infectious as well. And we barely talked about Carlos Correa, but, an all-star with the Twins for the first time. We've been led to believe he's a slow starter habitually, maybe the first 2 or 3 weeks this year, but I think that we're going to expect more of him in the first half of the year after the year he's had this year. And again, part of that is just having better players around you, but now's the time where he's got to prove he's worth the money and go win a playoff series, in my opinion.
Yeah, and he showed up, I think, to his credit last year in the playoffs, but I was someone that was always kind of critical of him, and at least in my own mind the past couple seasons of when he wasn't hitting early on. And he dealt with some injuries, and COVID was in there too, and kind of kept him out of the lineup a little bit early on in the year. But everyone talks about his defense, right, and how great that is, and we all know that, and that's amazing to see what he does there. But for me, it was always okay. You signed him, brought him in, right, signed this big deal. He also needs to contribute with the bat. He can't just be up here and just kind of be like an average guy who hits once in a while. We need to see that more consistently. So I think the fact that he is doing that this year finally is awesome to see, and gets rewarded for it as the lone all-star, or at least right now for the Twins, which is something that's been pointed out a couple times too, with not that we need to get into that can of worms of how the all-star selections are made, but I think it just speaks to the depth of the Twins right now and how everyone is kind of contributing, which you mentioned earlier. It's kind of 4 or 5 guys a night can be hitting, so you're obviously not going to select all of them to the
Right.
All-Star team. They're not the Phillies or whatever.
We're just flyover country in Minnesota,
Yeah.
Heather. Just flyover country.
Yeah, we're just little Minnesota. So, but it's it's nice to see him get rewarded for the first half of the season he's been having.
For sure. We'll wrap up here in just a second. Heather, I want to thank you for joining me on short notice today on Make Love Not War. Wonderful as always. We'll get you some Jimmy's salad dressing and dips to your palatial estate there. But thanks for joining us. And you can't watch the Twins. I can't watch them very much because of this situation between Bally's and Xfinity. Sorry. Let's hope we have I look in Dallas, right? Teams all came together this week and said, all right, we're doing our own platform. It's going to be free streaming online. Let's hope that by a September stretch run, it's not going to happen then. Let's hope that when this team rolls out its World Series banner in April, that we are all able to watch it, maybe for free. What do you say?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I worry about, can we watch Wild and Wolves next year too, or next season? And yeah, that would be great, because it's been very weird to not be able to watch a lot of these games. And it's 2024. I don't really care about the blame game or whose fault it is. Let's just get it figured out.
I listen to a lot of I tell you, I listen to radio is like nostalgic for me. I listen to a lot of baseball on the radio, and we're blessed to have a really good radio team here in Minnesota, but it's definitely not the same as curling up on the couch at 7:00 with a cold beer watching the Twins. So let's hope they're back on TV for most of us here soon. Again, Heather Rule, freelance journalist extraordinaire. I am Ryan Stanzel. Thanks to our producer Chris Salazar. Everyone here at Pull Tab Sports for Make Love Not War. We will see you next time.